Matt McQueeny is with us here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Toby. How are you?
I'm doing amazing today, yeah. Now, you're from the podcast Konaverse, or Conaverse, I'm not sure, you can tell me.
Yeah,
But what is the basic idea of that podcast?
sure. So yeah, it can go any which way, right?
Hmm.
Tomato, tomato, right? But
Yeah,
Konaverse is a podcast that was conceived. Really, it launched in the last month,
yeah,
and it's started by a company called Konabos, which is a global technology firm that specializes in licensed content management systems. That's a mouthful, right? But so what we really wanted to do is when you work in technology, you often, as much as you try to fight it, you often lose the human connection and narrative at times, right? Because
yeah.
tech is so engineering and
Mm,
all this. So what we wanted to do was almost use the base of technology, use who this company is in the field, but interview guests who might be peers in this technology field, but tell deeper stories about them.
yeah,
So we'll bring on in this system, which is actually called Sitecore. This is the global technology system.
yeah,
They have something called MVPs. You know, anyone who understands sports will get what that means, right?
yeah,
I think in this case, it's most valuable professional.
yeah,
But what we've done is we have several MVPs in our company as well. What we've done is brought on MVPs initially and not talked about why they're so great with Sitecore or this or that, but talked about deeper connections, like when they're not working. What is it that they do? And we've really, personally, we feel great about what we did because we have one guest, John West, who's actually a lifetime MVP in the system, who also teaches English to children and villagers in the countryside in Laos.
ooh,
And so that's a real interesting deep dive.
yeah,
We've talked to one guy, you'll understand this, the one guy who is another MVP who's pivoting into voiceover work. He has a
oh,
great voice. And then another who's similar, you guessed it, an MVP. He has a child with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy,
mm,
and he and his wife are the primary caregivers to
yeah,
that now adult son. And so our piece is really to say, hey, we know you through technology, but let's really, as my other guest host, Akshay Sarah says, let's really unpeel the onion. Let's really get into the depth of what's going on in your life,
yeah,
and then really bring it back to how the heck do you do your job? How are you a high level professional on top of doing these things? And I think with the pandemic of the last year and change, we're all dealing with these kind of similar thought processes, right? We've
yeah,
all, maybe we're not dealing with a child with disability, but we're dealing with kids, we're dealing with family, we're home, we're not going to school. A lot of our world has been kind of flipped a bit. And so we kind of follow the discussions and the conversations. As you know, doing this, you
yeah,
never know where they're going to go, and you really got to be open to mining it. So that's really what it is. We're Konabos,
yeah,
and we like this idea of the Konaverse.
mm,
So it's a world that's connected to us. It's connected on technology, but we want to bring the human narrative and human connection in, and that can include employees as well who have amazing stories.
yeah.
I think I was hearing someone say we have at least one employee on every continent. So that's kind of cool.
Even Antarctica.
Well, that's a good question. Not, you know what? We're going to have to work on that because I don't think we have Antarctica.
Oh no.
You went right to it. But yeah, we're really dispersed around the world. And this is kind of a human connection mechanism, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the long and short of it. Probably a little longer than you were hoping, but
Yeah. And it's good to ask what these people do in their spare time because no matter how big someone is, I've had guests on the show where I've asked them what they do in their spare time, and you know them for this one thing, and you forget that they actually have a life beyond their job.
yeah, no, you're exactly right. And we really all do, right? I mean, for the best of us, we can intersect our personal and professional as much as possible, almost like the concentric circles of like
Yeah.
that Olympics thing there. But, even in the best connection between the two, there are still going to be outliers where the thing that you have a passion about just can't be integrated into your life, but is so interesting, and you happen to be an expert on it. And that's really another piece of what we like, is just almost human conversation leading to insights that can help other people, in their moment. Because most people, this is such an intimate medium. Yeah. We're in their ears, right? We're in the shower with them. We're in their car. We're on their run, and you're right in their ears. And so I think the insights that can be garnered, someone can come out of it and say, hey, I never thought of that. That's a great thing that I can do next. Or maybe this gave me a thought on something that I was stuck on that I can move forward with. And you know what? We're having all these great conversations, but why don't we record them, put them out there, use our digital marketing expertise to really try to get out in front of as many people as possible, and see where it goes. Right. I mean, that's the other piece I just want to hit on quickly on this. This really is not, I've kind of been asked the question, well, what's the end goal? And the cool thing about this one, we don't want to be wasting people's time and everything, but the end goal here is human connection. Yeah. It's kind of it's the double bottom line, as they call it, right? Like, yes, it would be great if this leads to dollars, but that's not the point. The point is to connect and to show how we think, not just about a technology project, but how we think, how we are global, how we feel about the people who work here and the people we work with and partner. And so that it's a truly, I don't want to say altruistic, but that's the true enthusiasm of it. Yeah. It's to build something that lasts based on human connection and storytelling.
Yeah, for sure. And I take it that because you've all came from tech, that the podcast is quite technically professional.
Yeah. Well, I would hope so. I mean, it was funny when we got on, you said, oh, the sound is pretty good, and I think that, to me, I have been in podcasting coming up on about 8 years. Yeah. So I'm kind of new to Konabos, and that's kind of in some ways why we launched the podcast. The new guy does this. Hey, let's see if we can build something on it. But what I've learned over the years made it easier, right? So I was able to say, all right, we're going to use this platform. These are the places that you go to get your show into these indexes. You're not going to, you have a great setup, speaking you, Toby, but like, you don't always have to have that. Like, let's launch and iterate. Let's get it up there. Let's use Zoom because the sound is good. Let's get this USB mic, and you're off and running. And so I think that was what allowed us to pivot in quickly. We came up with the idea and launched our first episode maybe a week and a half later. Yeah. So that to me is exciting as well. So yes, we are able to technically get it off the ground well. We have a nice marketing flow, automation flow internally that we can kind of feed the Konaverse into. We're doing a lot with clips, which is a big piece now, where you go through, you find a minute where someone talked about something specific, make it into a video clip, share it on social media, see how that does. And you kind of model it all together to kind of create a reach, right? So, so absolutely. The tech part helps. Anything we do, I think, in life, often you're helped by the experience of the people who are a part of it. Yeah. And it might be a magic that happens from the combination of these different parts. And that to me is always interesting. It creates a bigger pie than you even thought of.
Yeah, that's for sure. And who would you say is the ideal audience for the podcast?
Yeah, that's the funny thing when I talk about the bottom line piece, right? Because most people would want to launch something and say, here's our target audience. This is going to be our growth strategy. This, the way we think of it is, let's use this platform. Let's go after meaningful stories. The guests are probably going to be connected to us through the tech supply chain, if you will, somehow, whether they're front end, back end, designers, testers. And let's use that. And then let's see where their stories take us. And then in some ways, we've thought of it, each episode is almost its own world, right? Mm. So the caregiving episode, yes, there's a lot there. We can talk about tech and career and pivoting, but hey, there's also an audience for caregiving. And so let's see if we seed this into those audiences. and see if there's something meaningful for them. Again, it's not going to be necessarily a bottom line type of thing, but it's going to create reach in different ways. And that really is that's the meaning we look to get out of it. It's almost like we uncover something in the episode, and then we have the source material, and then we go through and say, oh, wow, there are these 10 pieces that we can market. Maybe not this week, but we can put it into something, because it's evergreen too. That's the great part. It's not necessarily based on today. It's based on story, lifetimes. And so we can seed those things out through the year, and maybe there's a caregivers month, right? Or there's a caregivers day, and we could go, oh, let's use that piece on that day, and then jump into this. They have this great term now, newsjacking, right? You see what's in the news, and then you try to jump into it if you have relevant content that can align with it, even if it's older or if it's going to come, so that really is the thing. I think our audience initially is going to be the type of people who follow our technology leaders and technology specialists. And we have a nice audience for that. And it's been nice to see the way, honestly, this has been received in that audience, because it's a little off center of maybe what our expected content delivery is to those audiences, but they've taken it up because good storytelling ultimately catches, right? And you don't care about where it comes from at the end of the day. You just care about hearing a good story and feeling good about it. And so, that's the thing. We have a core audience, and then I think each episode will maybe take us into, like, I loved looking, for instance, at that, the analytics for that episode with the John West, who, lifetime MVP, who also teaches English to children in Laos countryside. And to see that episode, of course, has downloads in Laos. It's kind of cool to see the way it's spread. So it's kind of two-pronged in that kind of way.
Absolutely. Well, in the not too distant future, do you know what the episodes will have in store? Yeah, no,
I do. So we, one recommendation I would make to anybody going into this is to really leverage the early enthusiasm everybody always has for these, and to really build a backlog of interviews early when you're really excited, enthusiastic. Doesn't mean you're going to lose it, but I always think that's important. Get it all in there. So we have a bunch of episodes. We're seeing we're going to make sure to talk to all the people in our company too about their stories, because we see that as an important internal and external tool about who our people are. And we are global, so there's so many cool stories. We have one employee from New Zealand, so it's kind of cool to talk through that. So we're going to be coming up with episodes. Kamruz Jaman, who's one of our leaders. He was born in Bangladesh, grew up in Britain, lives in Canada now. Really interesting, right? And then Dennis Augustine is another one who is from Barbados and lives in Toronto now. Real great backstory. So we're going to mine those backstories, and then we're going to continually just reach out to the community to add from the outside. So it's an inside out, outside in kind of feel. We'll always have guests when you have a business. That's the good part of it. Yeah. And because you're a host of the podcast, you probably don't get asked this yourself very often. So what do you get up to in your spare time when you're not hosting the podcast and working in tech? It's funny you say that. I love podcasting. So I have my own podcast as well. And I've done that for about 8 years. I also love sports. I'm about 80% of the way through a master's in business administration from a college here in New Jersey. I have a family, 2 boys, 6 and 2-year-olds. So I'm kind of up to a lot, just trying to hang on. But these, in some ways, many people would see these podcasts as like another thing to do. I see them as something that helps you slow down, because I love talking to people, and I love seeing where conversation can lead, right? I mean, when people look at like a blog, right? What's our blog strategy? A blog is an empty canvas, and you have to write, and people get blocks. I don't think people really get talker's block. And so that's what I love with podcasting and discussion and conversation, is anybody who's, got any real knowledge, they can talk to something. And so that's really what I love about it. It's almost, we come out of these episodes at times going, boy, I feel really good. It was like therapy in a way. That was like free therapy. And so, so that's really like, that's my thing. I'm kind of moving on move in a lot of different spheres between tech, sports, entrepreneurship, school, kids, family, like anyone. And so that, to me, I hope helps the podcast, that I have a bunch of experiences that I could potentially angle into the discussion, which has happened. And like, this doing this, it always happens. It's better that way. Right. So yeah, bunch of stuff going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
thanks for asking.
Where are we able to find the podcast if we want to have a listen?
Oh, I would love that. Absolutely. So we did build a dedicated podcast website, and it's called Konaverse, Konaverse.Konabos, which is the company, Konabos.com. So that's Konaverse.Konabos.com. And I want you to say that 6 times and see if you can remember it, or if your mouth can keep doing it.
Konaverse.Konabos.com.
That's right. And we're also on all of the major podcast distribution indexes, Apple, Spotify, which has become very big. A lot of acquisitions there, and then Google, Stitcher, Amazon. But I like going to the website because you can get to all those places from there.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit more of a deeper experience. We do a little more, maybe custom cover art, a little more details. So that's a good place to go. Konaverse.Konabos.com.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on the show today. It's been great to have you here.
Thank you, Toby. I really appreciate it. It's been great speaking with you.